Okay, it's late, but I really want to read every other day if I can. I just want to read every day, but this internship is so kicking my ass right now. And you gotta ask yourself, I'm doing this internship for what? Become a better actor. Let's see, I played my tuba, and I made coffee, and I did all this other shit, but I didn't do anything to become a better actor. So this is what's helping me to become a better actor, is to read aloud and to try to make pictures, as a performer with these words. Um, so that's what I'm doing. I'm going to read chapter 3, just a few pages of it tonight, just because I'm really tired. So forgive me, I'm going to be starting over many times, I have a feeling. I love chapter 3 just because it describes the first of Jay Gatsby's garden parties. His not only his garden parties but his evening soirees that he has, and they're just so. F. Scott Fitzgerald does such a remarkable job of just describing almost every detail. You can smell the air of being there. And I've never gone to a party of this sort of caliber, of this sort of extravagance, opulence, heft. The closest thing I've gone to a big party like this was when I was at the Naval Academy. And I was invited to the superintendent's house for a garden party with 300 other people. I mean, it wasn't like I was all by myself. And there was a surreal nature to it, and I was dressed up in my dress whites, and there was blue and white bunting all over this extraordinarily large garden, and his house looked like Versailles. I remember that, and it had a huge sun porch, and on that sun porch were all these chairs that were never sat in, and there was a trio of musicians from the Naval Academy band that were playing beautiful jazz music, and and the grass had just been cut. So you could smell the smell of that cut grass, and the roses were yellow and fragrant, and there was wisteria, and there was lilac. The beautiful trees that were there that looked like elm and oak. And there were so many. I knew no one, and I remember being introduced often by someone to someone else, and we all instantly forgot each other's names. And I was even introduced to the admiral, who didn't know who I was, and I knew who he was. But it was one of those times where it's just very special, and you knew you're never going to forget a moment like that, and I never have, and I hopefully never will. It was one of the extraordinary experiences of my life. So reading chapter 3 from The Great Gatsby is pretty special because it reminds me of that time, except it is considerably more opulent. Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald, chapter 3. There was music from my neighbor's house through the summer nights. In his blue gardens, men and women came and went like moths amongst the whisperings and the champagne and the stars. At high tide in the afternoon, I watched his guests diving from the tower of his raft or taking the sun on the hot sand of his beach while his two motorboats slit the waters of the Sound, drawing aquaplanes over cataracts of foam. On weekends, his Rolls Royce became an omnibus bearing parties to and from the city between 9 in the morning and long past midnight, while his station wagon scampered like a brisk yellow bug to meet all trains. And on Mondays, 8 servants, including an extra gardener, toiled all day with mops and scrubbing brushes and hammers and garden shears, repairing the ravages of the night before. Every Friday, 5 crates of oranges and lemons arrived from a fruiterer in New York. Every Monday, these same oranges and lemons left his back door in a pyramid of pulpless halves. There was a machine in the kitchen which could extract the juice of 200 oranges in half an hour. if a little button was pressed 200 times by a butler's thumb. At least once a fortnight, a corps of caterers came down with several hundred feet of canvas and enough colored lights to make a Christmas tree of Gatsby's enormous garden. On buffet tables garnished with glistening hors d'oeuvres, spiced baked hams crowded against salads of harlequin designs and pastry pigs and turkeys bewitched to a dark gold. In the main hall, a bar with real brass rail was set up and stocked with gins and liquors and with cordials so long forgotten that most of his female guests were too young to know one from another. By 7 o'clock, the orchestra had arrived. No thin five-piece affair, but a whole pit full of oboes and trombones and saxophones and viols and cornets and piccolos and low and high drums. The last swimmers have come in from the beach now and are dressing upstairs. The cars from New York are parked 5 deep in the drive, and already the halls and salons and verandas are gaudy with primary colors, and hair shorn in strange new ways, and shawls beyond the dreams of Castile. The bar is in full swing, and floating rounds of cocktails permeate the garden outside until the air is alive with chatter and laughter and casual innuendo and introductions forgotten on the spot, and enthusiastic meetings between women who never knew each other's names. The lights grow brighter as the earth lurches away from the sun, and now the orchestra is playing yellow cocktail music, and the opera of voices pitches a key higher. Laughter is easier minute by minute, spilled with prodigality, tipped out a cheerful word. The groups change more swiftly, swell with new arrivals, dissolve and form in the same breath. Already there are wanderers, confident girls who weave here and there among the stouter and more stable, become for a sharp, joyous moment the center of the group, and then, excited with triumph, glide on through the sea change of faces and voices and color under the constantly changing light. God, is that not just beautiful? My God, that's just such beautiful writing. Suddenly, one of these gypsies in trembling opal seizes a cocktail out of the air, dumps it down for courage, and moving her hand like Frisco, dances out alone on the canvas platform. A momentary hush. The orchestra leader varies his rhythm obligingly for her, and there is a burst of chatter as the erroneous news goes that she is Gilda Gray's understudy from the Follies. The party has begun. I believe that on the first night I went to Gatsby's house, I was one of the few guests who had actually been invited. People were not invited. They went there. They got into automobiles which bore them out to Long Island, and somehow they ended up at Gatsby's door. Once there, they were introduced by somebody who knew Gatsby, and after that they conducted themselves according to the rules and behavior associated with amusement parks. Sometimes they came and went without having met Gatsby at all. Came for the party with a simplicity of heart that was its own ticket of admission. I had actually been invited. A chauffeur in a uniform of robin's egg blue crossed my lawn early that Saturday morning with a surprisingly formal note from his employer. The honor would be entirely Gatsby's, it said, if I would attend his little party that night. He had seen me several times and had intended to call on me long before, but a peculiar combination of circumstances had prevented it. Signed, J. Gatsby, in a majestic hand. Dressed up in white flannels, I went over to his lawn a little after 7 and wandered about rather ill at ease among swirls and eddies of people I didn't know, though here and there was a face I had noticed on the commuting train. I was immediately struck by the number of young Englishmen dotted about, all well-dressed, all looking a little hungry, and all talking in low, earnest voices to solid and prosperous Americans. I was sure that they were all selling something, bonds or insurance or automobiles. They were at least agonizingly aware of the easy money in the vicinity and convinced that it was theirs for a few words in the right key. As soon as I arrived, I made an attempt to find my host, but the 2 or 3 people of whom I asked his whereabouts stared at me in such an amazed way and denied so vehemently any knowledge of his movements that I slunk off in the direction of the cocktail table, the only place in the garden where a single man could linger without looking purposeless and alone. I was on my way to getting roaring drunk from sheer embarrassment when Jordan Baker came out of the house and stood at the head of the marble steps, leaning a little backward and looking with contemptuous interest down into the garden. Welcome or not, I found it necessary to attach myself to someone before I should begin to address cordial remarks to passers-by. "Hello!" I roared, advancing toward her. My voice seemed unnaturally loud across the garden. "I thought you might be here," she responded absently as I came up. "I remembered you lived next door to—" She held my hand impersonally as a promise that she'd take care of me in a minute, and gave ear to 2 girls in twin yellow dresses who had stopped at the foot of the steps. "Hello!" they cried together. "Sorry you didn't win." That was for the golf tournament. She had lost in the finals the week before. "You don't know who we are," said one of the girls in yellow, "but we met you here about a month ago." "You've dyed your hair since then," remarked Jordan, and I started, but the girls had moved casually on, and her remark was addressed to the premature moon, produced, like the supper, no doubt, out of a caterer's basket. Jordan's slender golden arm resting in mine, we descended the steps and sauntered about the garden. A tray of cocktails floated at us through the twilight, and we sat down at a table with 2 girls in yellow and 3 men, each one introduced to us as Mr. Mumble. "Do you girls come to these parties often?" inquired Jordan of the girl beside her. "The last one I was at, I met you," answered the girl in an alert, confident voice. She turned to her companion. "Wasn't it for you, Lucy?" It was for Lucy, too. "I like to come," Lucy said. "I never care what I do, so I always have a good time. When I was here last, I tore my gown on a chair, and he asked me my name and address. Inside a week, I got a package from Courier's with a new evening gown in it." "Did you keep it?" asked Jordan. "For sure I did. I was going to wear it tonight, but it was too big in the bust and had to be altered. It was gas blue with lavender beads. $265. "That's something funny about a fellow that'd do something like that," the other girl said eagerly. "He doesn't want trouble with anybody." "Who doesn't?" I inquired. "Gatsby," she told me. That's it. We'll pick up from there.